The mechanic was told never to open the trunk of that abandoned sedan. He didn't touch it. He just listened, dropped his tools, and ran. The hitchhiker on the swamp road in Louisiana said only 5 words before she vanished into the tree line. "Don't look in the mirror." And in a hunting cabin deep in the Maine woods, a hunter found a warning etched into the floorboards beneath his bed, a message the previous occupant left in complete darkness. The final line read, "It wears my face." Tonight, 3 people share the terrifying moments they realized they were not as alone as they thought. Welcome back to Midnight Narrative. Before we dive into tonight's dark accounts, drop a comment right now and let me know. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Be sure to turn off the lights, turn up your volume, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a night with us. By the time I saw the hazard lights blinking in the distance, I'd been driving for nearly 12 hours straight. It was 3 a.m. I was exhausted, running on cold, bitter coffee from a glass pot that had been sitting on a burner since sunset, and I was about to make a decision that still keeps me awake at night. My name is Ethan Vance. I run long-distance hotshot freight through West Texas in a heavy-duty diesel rig. Highway 90 out near Sanderson, lonely country. It's the kind of pitch-black silence that feels heavy, like a physical weight pressing against your chest through the glass of the windshield. Out there, civilization doesn't just fade away. It feels completely forgotten. It was late October 2019. My co-driver had taken off sick in El Paso with a severe fever, so I was running the leg entirely solo. The sky was completely dead. No moon, no stars, just an endless, suffocating blackness stretching over the desert floor. When you drive through the West Texas desert at night, your high beams are the only thing tethering you to reality. Anything beyond the yellow arc of your headlights doesn't exist. Up ahead, on the shoulder of the empty 2-lane highway, a pair of weak amber hazard lights were pulsing. I almost didn't stop. The smart move, the move every seasoned trucker learns on day 1, was to keep rolling and call it in at the next way station. But out there, if someone breaks down at 3 a.m. in the dead of autumn, the desert temperature drops fast. They could freeze before sunrise or worse. I slowed my speed, engine brake rumbling through the night air, and pulled my rig onto the loose gravel shoulder about 30 feet behind the disabled vehicle, leaving my high beams on to illuminate the scene. It was a dark blue 2014 sedan. The driver's side door was cracked open just an inch or two, the interior dome light completely dead. I grabbed my heavy 6-cell aluminum flashlight from the passenger seat, stepped down from my cab, and walked toward the car. The crunch of dust and gravel under my work boots was the only sound for miles echoing into the cavernous dark. "Hey, you all right out here?" I called out, keeping my voice loud and firm. No answer, just the steady, dry click-clack of the turn signal relay firing inside the dash. Pause for a moment right here. Put yourself in my shoes. You're on a pitch-black stretch of desert highway at 3 a.m. with no cell service. Would you have stepped out of your truck to check that car, or would you have kept driving? Let me know in the comments below. I approached the driver's window and shone my light through the glass. The front seats were empty. The leather was cracked, the floor mats littered with old paper receipts. But as the beam of my flashlight swept across the dashboard, my heart did a strange, sickly flip in my chest. Hanging from the rearview mirror by a faded blue ribbon was a small wooden St. Christopher medal with a deep, distinct scratch across the back. On the passenger seat sat a half-empty travel mug from a truck stop in Van Horn with a cracked, yellowed lid. And sitting right in the center cup holder was a ring of keys attached to an aluminum tag stamped with my own fleet number, 44002. My hand started shaking so violently the heavy beam of the flashlight bounced wildly against the glass. It was my car, my personal sedan, the blue 2014 Ford I had parked in my locked garage 400 miles away in Abilene before taking this haul. I pressed my face closer to the cold glass, trying to force my exhausted brain to make sense of the impossibility in front of me. The inspection sticker on the corner of the windshield was mine. The state registration slip tucked into the visor had my name typed on it in faded black ink, Ethan Vance. Then I noticed something that made the blood run completely cold in my veins. The driver's door wasn't just cracked open. The handle had fresh, slick mud smeared across the chrome. Mud in the middle of a dry Texas drought. and the ignition key was turned to the on position, powering a tiny blue digital clock embedded in the stereo unit. The clock read 3:14 a.m. I pulled back my sleeve and looked at my wristwatch. The digital face read 3:12 a.m. A cold wave of pure, primal horror hit me. I backed away from the car, my boots sliding in the loose gravel. That's when I heard it coming from the dark backseat of the sedan, a slow, wet, heavy rasp of breath. Someone was sitting on the floorboard behind the driver's seat, sitting completely still in the dark, waiting for me to pull that door open. I didn't inspect the back seat. I didn't reach for the handle. I turned on my heel, sprinted back to my semi-truck, threw myself into the cab, slammed the door, and slammed the shifter into gear. I tore out onto Highway 90 so fast the massive rear tires squealed and spat gravel into the night air. At 3:14 a.m. exactly, the precise time displayed on the sedan's dash, I looked into my driver's side mirror. Behind me, in the absolute darkness of the shoulder, the high beams of that blue sedan clicked on. It pulled hard off the gravel, swung into the lane behind me, and began to follow. It didn't tail close. It stayed exactly 50 yards back, its bright white lights blinding me through my side mirrors. I pushed my rig to its absolute limit, hitting 90 miles an hour down the pitch-black highway, engine screaming. But the sedan matched my speed effortlessly, maintaining that exact agonizing distance. I drove like a madman for 30 miles until I saw the bright, buzzing, fluorescent glow of a 24-hour truck stop on the outskirts of Del Rio. I swerved into the lit parking lot, heavy tires roaring over the concrete, and brought the rig to a screeching halt directly under the floodlights. I whipped around to look at the highway. It was completely empty. No headlights, no taillights, just miles of desert dark. I sat in the cab, gasping for air, sweat dripping down my neck. Hand trembling, I pulled out my cell phone, which finally had a single bar of service, and called home. My wife answered on the 6th ring, her voice groggy and thick with sleep. "Ethan, is everything okay? What time is it?" "Sarah," I choked out, unable to keep the terror from my voice. "I need you to do something for me right now. Don't ask questions. Please, get out of bed, walk out to the garage, and tell me if my car is there." She hesitated, confused, but heard the sheer panic in my tone. I listened to the sound of her footsteps echoing through the house, the heavy click of the garage door opening, and then silence for 20 agonizing seconds. She came back to the phone. "Ethan, the car is right here. It's locked. The keys are on the kitchen hook. What's going on?" I couldn't answer her. I hung up, locked my cab doors, and sat under those gas station floodlights until the sun came up over the Texas border. I never drove Highway 90 again. I quit long-haul hotshot trucking 6 months later. But here is the detail that still haunts my dreams, the thing I can never explain to anyone. When I sprinted back to my semi-truck that night, I left the engine running and the passenger door unlocked. And when I finally returned home 3 days later and got back into my personal car in Abilene, sitting in the driver's cup holder was a second travel mug from Van Horn, filled with cold, black coffee. My name is Marcus Reed. Up until 2 years ago, I worked as a timberline surveyor for a private forestry firm operating out of southern Louisiana. My job was simple, boring, and quiet. Drive remote access tracks, map clearings, check culverts, and ensure local logging operations weren't encroaching on protected parish land. 99% of the time, the worst thing you faced out there was a flat tire, a swarm of horseflies, or a sun-basking alligator blocking the trail. That changed in August of 2020. The humidity that month was suffocating. The heat index hit 110 degrees every afternoon, turning the air into a thick, wet soup that felt heavy in your lungs. I was 10 miles deep into a restricted access logging track near the edge of the Atchafalaya Basin, a place where the trees grow so thick and high that the canopy swallows the daylight, leaving the forest floor in a state of perpetual dusk. I was bouncing along a rutted dirt trail in my company pickup truck when I saw her. She was standing on a narrow mud bank near a collapsed wooden trestle bridge that used to cross a stagnant Bayou channel. She wasn't waving, She wasn't signaling for help and she wasn't holding a phone. She was just standing perfectly still in a faded gray linen dress that was soaked in dark swamp water up to her knees, watching my truck approach with a cold, unblinking stare. I slowed the truck to a crawl and rolled down my driver's window. The instant the glass dropped, the heavy smell of stagnant river mud and sour rot filled the cab. "You okay out here, ma'am?" I asked, leaning over. "You're a long way from the main road." "I need a ride to the camp," she said. Her voice didn't sound scared, relieved, or tired. It was completely flat, devoid of any pitch, cadence, or emotion, like a synthesized recording playing through a cheap speaker. I looked around the clearing. There were no ATV tracks, no parked boats, no hiking gear. "How did you get out here?" I asked. "The state road is miles back." She didn't answer the question. She just pointed a thin, pale finger down the overgrown track ahead and whispered, "He knows you're coming." Every instinct in my gut screamed at me to shift into reverse, put my foot on the gas and get out of those woods. But out in the basin, you're taught never to leave someone stranded. The swamps don't give people second chances. I made the worst mistake of my life. "Hop in," I said, leaning over to push open the passenger door. She climbed into the cab with a slow, mechanical movement, setting a heavy, rusted metal box on her lap. She didn't wear seatbelts. She just sat rigid, staring straight ahead through the windshield. Up close, the smell coming off her wasn't just swamp water. It was mixed with a sharp, chemically metallic odor like burnt copper or sulfur. We drove in total silence for about half a mile. The tire tracks grew narrower, cypress knees knocking against the undercarriage of my truck. Without turning her head, she spoke. "You run this stretch every Tuesday?" I felt a sudden stitch of unease in my chest. "Every other Tuesday," I corrected, keeping my eyes on the dirt trail. "How do you know my schedule?" "He counts the tires," she murmured, her voice barely above a rasp. "He knows how heavy your truck is." If a complete stranger in the middle of a desolate swamp told you that someone was counting your tires, what would you do? Would you slam on the brakes right there? Tell me in the comments below. At mile marker 8, the canopy above us closed in entirely. Massive, moss-draped oak trees leaned over the trail, blocking out what little sunlight remained. It was pitch black in the forest. I reached over to the dash to flip on my high beams. "Don't turn them on," she commanded softly. Her hand snapped out and caught my wrist. Her fingers were shockingly, impossibly cold, like ice pulled straight from a freezer. I pulled my arm back, my heart pounding in my throat. "Ma'am, I can't see the road without light." "Don't turn them on," she repeated, her unblinking eyes fixed on the black woods ahead. "And whatever you do not look in your rearview mirror." "Why?" I demanded, my hand shaking against the leather of the steering wheel. "Because he's not behind the truck," she whispered. "He's in the bed." The moment those words left her mouth, a deafening metallic thud rattled the frame of the pickup as if something massive, heavy, and dense had dropped straight out of the trees and landed hard in the truck bed right behind my cabin glass. The entire rear suspension of the 4x4 sagged several inches under the sudden weight. Panic seized me. My foot instinctively slammed onto the brake pedal. The tires locked up, spraying mud everywhere as the truck skidded to a halt. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't brace herself against the dash. She remained perfectly rigid, staring ahead. "Keep driving forward," she hissed, a sharp, violent edge cracking through her flat tone. "If you stop, he steps down to the side windows." I didn't argue. I stomped on the gas pedal. The engine roared, the tires caught traction, and the truck surged forward down the narrow trail. For 3 long, agonizing miles, as I navigated the winding dirt path in the dark, I listened to the sounds coming from the bed of my truck. Slow, heavy, dragging. It sounded like heavy iron boots scraped across the corrugated steel bed liner, moving back and forth, dragging themselves right up against the glass of my rear window. I kept my gaze locked strictly on the dirt trail in front of me, refusing to let my eyes drift to the center mirror. Finally, the forest trail broke through the tree line and merged onto a paved 2-lane state highway. Sunlight hit the windshield, blinding me for a fraction of a second. Before the truck even came to a complete stop on the paved shoulder, the woman unlatched the passenger door. She stepped out onto the gravel, her rusted metal box clutched tightly under her arm, and turned to look at me through the open window one last time. Her eyes were completely wide, the pupils dilated so far there was almost no white left in them. "He knows your plate number now," she said. She turned, walked down the embankment into the tall sawgrass and vanished into the marsh. I didn't look back. I didn't check the truck bed. I hit the highway and drove straight to the parish sheriff's office in Houma. A deputy took my statement with an expression of mild disbelief. He agreed to drive out to the logging track 2 days later to inspect the area. When he called me back, his tone was entirely different. He told me the old wooden trestle bridge at the start of the trail had been washed out completely for 6 months, collapsed into 10 feet of water and mud. No vehicle could have possibly crossed it, and no truck had been down that path in over a year. I quit my surveying job the following week and moved out of state. But even now, years later, whenever I drive my truck over a speed bump or a pothole at night, I feel the rear axle drop just a little lower than it should, as if something heavy is still sitting back there, waiting. This final account was sent to us by a viewer named David Miller, a 48-year-old architectural inspector living outside Minneapolis, Minnesota. And unlike the previous stories, this one left behind a physical record that still exists today. In June of 2021, David rented a secluded wooden cabin on a private lake near the town of Ely, deep in the Minnesota North Woods. He was looking for a week of quiet solo fishing, a chance to get off the grid, read, and unplug from his stressful job. The property consisted of 4 rustic cabins managed by a local family business. David was assigned to cabin 4, a small single-story timber structure set back about 50 yards from the water, surrounded by towering red pines. The cabin had a main living area, a small kitchenette, a bathroom, and a modest bedroom with a double bed, a nightstand, and a built-in closet with a heavy wooden sliding door. David arrived late on a Thursday afternoon, unpacked his fishing gear, cooked a light dinner, and went to bed early. Before turning off the lamp, he noticed the sliding closet door was resting halfway open on its track, revealing pitch darkness inside. Being a light sleeper who disliked open doors in unfamiliar rooms, David stood up, slid the heavy wooden door completely shut until it clicked against the frame, turned off the light, and went to sleep. At roughly 2:30 a.m., he woke up. There was no sound from the lake outside, no wind, no loons, no trees rustling. But inside the bedroom, in the absolute dark, David heard a distinct sound. Grrrch. It was the slow, rhythmic scraping of heavy timber sliding along an unoiled metal track. David sat up in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. He reached out, found the switch for the bedside lamp, and clicked it on. The sliding closet door was wide open. He sat frozen for nearly 2 minutes, holding his breath, listening for any sign of movement. Nothing. He stepped out of bed, gripped the edge of the door, and shone his phone light inside. The closet was completely empty. No clothes hangers, no shelves, just bare, unfinished pine walls. David noticed an odd detail then. While every other wall in the cabin had been painted with a dark mahogany stain, the interior of this closet was raw, untreated wood. He shook his head, assumed the cabin was slightly unlevel, closed the door firmly once more, and went back to sleep. When morning came, bright sunlight flooded through the bedroom window. David got up, dressed, and pulled back the sliding closet door to hang up his rain jacket. That was when the sunlight hit the interior face of the wooden door at a side angle, revealing deep gouges scratched directly into the raw timber. It hadn't been written with ink or carved with a knife. The wood had been violently shredded, as if someone had gouged the letters into the timber using a rusted nail or their own fingernails. 4 distinct lines of text were etched into the wood. If you are sleeping in this room, do not turn off the light. The man who built this cabin sits in the closet while you sleep. He does not like the lamp. He wears my face. Directly beneath the message, carved in much smaller, jagged, desperate strokes, was a date: September 14, 2019. David stood in that quiet bedroom, staring at the raw wood as a cold dread settled deep in his gut. The handwriting was uneven, the lines sloping downward as if written in near total darkness, but the pressure applied to the wood was immense. Out of all 3 stories tonight, which one gave you the biggest chills? Was it the car on Highway 90, the swamp road, or the message inside room 4's closet door? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. David pulled out his phone and snapped a clear, high-resolution photograph of the carved message, making sure the date was visible in the frame. He packed his bags immediately, loaded his truck, and drove down the dirt road to the property management office near the main gate. A woman in her mid-50s was sitting behind the counter. David walked in, set his key on the desk, pulled up the photo on his phone, and slid it across the glass toward her. "I need you to tell me what this is," David said quietly. The woman looked down at the screen. The moment her eyes scanned those carved lines, the color drained entirely from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out for several seconds. Where did you take this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Inside the closet of cabin 4, David replied. "Who rented that room on September 14th, 2019? The woman pulled the phone closer, her hands visibly trembling. She stood up, walked over to a filing cabinet in the back corner, and began flipping through old paper records. After a long, heavy silence, she turned back to David. "The man who originally owned this land and built these cabins. He lived in cabin 4, she said, her voice shaking. "He died in his sleep right in that bedroom in the winter of 2018. "That date on the door says September 2019, David pointed out. "That's a full year after he died." The manager didn't answer. She closed the file drawer, opened the cash register, pulled out David's entire rental fee in cash, and pushed it across the counter toward him. "I'm refunding your stay," she said flatly, refusing to meet his eyes. "I need you to leave the property now. Please." David took the cash, left the office, and immediately drove to the St. Louis County Sheriff's substation in town. He showed the deputy on duty the photo and gave a full statement regarding the cabin. The deputy made a brief note, took David's contact information, and said they would look into it. 2 months later, back home in Minneapolis, David submitted a formal public records request for incident logs associated with that specific property address. A few weeks later, a single-page document arrived in his mail. It was an official Sheriff's Department log entry dated September 18, 2019. The record detailed a missing person report filed by a family from Illinois whose 28-year-old son had rented cabin 4 for a weekend trip. Deputies who arrived to perform a welfare check found the guest's truck still parked in the driveway, his wallet, keys, and phone sitting untouched on the nightstand, and the cabin completely empty. No occupant was ever located. The case remains open to this day. David still has that photograph saved on his phone, backed up in 3 separate locations. And he says that whenever he zooms in on the bottom right corner of the image, right where the raw wood meets the inner frame of the closet track, you can see something that wasn't immediately obvious at first glance. Pressed into the unpainted pine, right below where the carving stops, are 2 small, dark, greasy handprints. Not dragged across the outside paneling, but smudged firmly into the wood from the inside of the closet wall, as if someone had been locked inside that shallow, dark space, pushing with all their weight to keep the door from sliding open. 3 stories. 3 ordinary people who stepped into places they shouldn't have, only to realize that the dark holds secrets far more dangerous than we dare to imagine. If you made it all the way to the end of tonight's video, leave a ghost emoji in the comment section so I know who the real horror fans are. Don't forget to share your thoughts on tonight's encounters, and let us know where you're watching from if you missed the check-in at the beginning. Thank you for spending your dark hours with us here at Midnight Narrative. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and tap that bell notification icon so you're the first to know the moment our next nightmare drops. Until next time, Keep your lights on, lock your doors, and join us again next time. Good night.